Okay, we'll start. Okay, good evening. My name is Anita Kayat. I'm a SCORE mentor. And you're here tonight to hear about nonprofits. But before we get started, we'd like to tell you a little bit about Harvard Community Service Center, which is Richard Brudero. And Richard is the Community Development Corporation Director. And you.
Thank you, Anita. It's great to see you. Thanks for coming to Harvard. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for coming here to Harvard for this seminar on how to start up nonprofits in Ohio. It's in person and we have it in Zoom as well. So those of you not in person, welcome also. Oh, pardon me. Welcome also. And thank you for participating. This is the second in a series of 3 seminars. And we have been working with Cleveland SCORE for the last 4 years. I'm happy to say it's been a wonderful relationship. Cleveland SCORE works with businesses that are ready to be born and ready to retire and everything in between. They have, it's a national organization. So if they can't do the work here with a local chapter, then they can draw upon the national chapter for resources and assist with whatever is needed here in the Cleveland area. We've had a great relationship with SCORE. In fact, the second year we were working with them, the Ohio CDC Association of Ohio chose us to be partners of the year for Ohio CDC. So that was really wonderful, even just our second year working together. And we've been doing even greater things since. So Harvard Community Service Center is primarily known as a social service agency. However, we do have a community development corporation here. It's part of the agency, which Anita did say I'm the director. We do have Deontay James here also. He's the Vice President of Economic Development and Real Estate, and he runs the program with Jelani Chavers. And we work extensively with small businesses. If you need any assistance, feel free to call us. And also additionally, if you do not have a SCORE mentor yet, please consider getting a SCORE mentor. They are extremely helpful for businesses young to old and everything in between. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Okay, so before we start on the nonprofits, I'm going to tell you a little bit about SCORE. So hopefully when you see what we can do for you, you will want to sign up to have a mentor. So we are the largest nonprofit free volunteer network that mentors small businesses in the country. We are all over the United States. So as Richard said, if we can't help you in our chapter here, there are a lot of other mentors that we can call on across the country. So no matter what stage your business is, if you're starting up, if you've been in business for a while, or you're thinking about selling it or retiring, we can help you. So our mission is to foster vibrant small businesses. And we do this by mentoring one-on-one and also by doing webinars like we're doing tonight. We hope that you as a small business owner gets all the support from us that you need to be a successful business owner. Probably 95% of all businesses are small businesses. So they drive the economy. And if you have been aware, in Cleveland in the last few years, the downtown area has improved dramatically. And that's totally because of small businesses. So you are important to the community in many different ways. This is sort of a picture of where we are located across the country. You can see that we are from coast to coast. We do have a code of ethics. Every year, each of us signs a code of ethics that says we are not able in any way to make money from your information, that we can't use your database information for commercial reasons, and that everything you tell us is confidential. So this is a snapshot of our website. You go up here, you can sign up for a mentor. You can enter your zip code and say, match me with someone who's close to you. Or you can just say, I'll take somebody, or you can fill out a small form telling us a little bit about your business, and that will help us match you up with someone who has the same background and will be able to help you. So we don't charge for our services. And that's partially because the Small Business Administration gives us some funding. But it's also because there are a lot of companies in the community that want to help small businesses, and they give us funding so that we can help you. Okay, so let's get down to business. So we're going to talk about understanding and launching nonprofits in Ohio, and each state has different requirements as far as how you register with the state and so forth. So I'm going to focus on Ohio. I hope by the end of this that you will have an idea of what a nonprofit organization is, something about nonprofits in Ohio, and how to start a nonprofit, and what are the requirements for tax exemption. So if you're planning on writing a business plan for your nonprofit, this is some information that will be helpful to you. There are 40,000 some nonprofits in Ohio that are registered as 501c3s. They generate over $100 billion of revenue. And they employ almost 500,000 people, which is almost 12% of the workforce. And Ohioans give over $5 billion to charities every year. So many of you will be looking for donations. This is a state where people do freely donate. So where are the nonprofits? 24% of them are in human services, 17% in education, and you can see the type of nonprofits that we have in Ohio. In Cleveland, there are almost 15,000 nonprofits. So if you're starting a nonprofit, we will tell you the first thing is look to see who might already be doing what you want to do, and maybe joining with them will be a way to go instead of starting your own. So in the Cleveland area, they employ, again, almost 250,000 people, earning more than $40 billion in revenue, with huge assets. But it does include, you're well aware, the Cleveland Clinic, University Hospital, the local universities. These are all nonprofit organizations. So you're stepping into an area that has a huge presence in northeastern Ohio. So one of the things you want to do is craft a mission statement. What is your business all about? What is the purpose? So you want to make it clear. You want people to understand exactly what you're going to do. You want it to be action-oriented. You want people to participate. You want them to be aware of your values. And you also want them to remember what you are doing. So you want to come up with a mission statement that sticks in people's minds. And here are some examples. For a tech company, to empower individuals and businesses through innovative technology solutions. And we're going to do this by providing user-friendly and accessible products to improve productivity and connect people. So it's really, yes. I'm sorry, I can't. Oh. Okay. But for a nonprofit, you generally are going to be doing something to improve the lives of people. In this particular case, improve the lives of homeless youth by offering comprehensive support services like housing, job training, mental health counseling, to enable them to gain self-sufficiency. So you kind of get the picture that your mission statement is, here's what we're going to do. These are the people we're going to do it for, and we're going to do it by accomplishing these things. So that's what you want to be thinking about. Some of the challenges you're going to run into, and I imagine you've already heard about that there's a finite pool of funding. So there's a lot of competition for the various funding opportunities, particularly if you're looking for grants. But if you have a really special nonprofit and you go about it right, you'll be able to garner enough funding to grow your nonprofit. So you need to make your service or your product unique. What about what you're doing is different from everybody else who has a nonprofit? You know, if you're helping a group of people that nobody else is helping, that's phenomenal. But you do also want to look and see what else is out there. Who else is doing what I would like to do or something similar? Because again, you might be able to join up with somebody who's already has a nonprofit. They might already have their 501c3, and they might already have in place a way to fund their business. So if you can join with them and maybe expand what they're doing, that's a win for both of you. And it gets you into something a lot quicker. So you want to think about that. Everybody who goes through starting a nonprofit has problems getting a board together. That's probably the biggest challenge you're going to have as a nonprofit owner, founder, I should say, because you never own a nonprofit. So again, business structures, Ohio is similar to many states where they offer you the opportunity to register your business as a nonprofit. So that's the easiest thing to do, and it's the best thing to do. If you register your nonprofit and you go through the process of applying for tax exemption with the IRS, then people who donate money to you can take that as a tax deduction. It also gives you some personal liability protection in the same way that an LLC works for a for-profit business. The nonprofit registration gives you that same type of protection for your nonprofit. Now, again, one of the difficulties is it does require a board of directors. And when you look at a board, you really want to think about what skills do I need to help me get my nonprofit going. So if you are the founder and your passion is helping somebody and you don't want to spend your time doing the administrative work, doing the marketing, doing the financials. You want to look for people who are willing to join your board, who can do those things for you, because they have to be done. So if you don't have somebody else who can do it, you're going to have to do it yourself. If you don't, your nonprofit's going to go nowhere. So when you start forming your nonprofit, think about, who do I know or who can I tap into to do those things that I can't do or don't want to do. And people who have still a passion for what I'm trying to do. So you want people who are going to actively be part of your organization. Now, you can form a nonprofit simply by registering your name with the state. I have a client, for instance, who gathers school supplies from women, teachers who are retiring, and she redistributes them to new teachers. She doesn't need a lot of money because she generally does it in person. So she doesn't want to go through all the hassle. So she's just an informal nonprofit. You know, the difficulty in some ways, if people give you donations, they can't deduct them. And you don't have the liability protection that you do if you have the 501c3. So you hear people say 501c3, you know, like, what does that mean? It just simply means that you've applied to the IRS for tax exempt status and you fall into the category of a charity. The IRS has probably 13 or 14 different classifications. So you might be a 501c4 if you say are a trade association. I have a friend who's on the board of a cemetery, and that's a 501c13. So there are a lot of different classifications for nonprofits, but most small nonprofits are 501c3. So they're classified in two ways: either a private foundation, which means mostly they get their funds from a single or a few different sources. So you're probably all aware of organizations that have been started by a family because they have a family member who has a certain disease or condition, and they want to support research in that condition, like the Susan Komen Breast Cancer Fund. That's a private foundation. Public charities, on the other hand, get funding from many different sources. Yes, sir.
Is it possible to check the slide, please? Can you go back?
Again, I can't.
Back one slide.
Back one slide. One more.
We were talking about registration.
Okay. That one.
One before there.
So it says no state law required. Is it to become a nonprofit? You don't have to file. Just say that.
No. No, if you know, you can be an informal nonprofit and you don't have to file.
So probably following the state advisor with that corporate bid. That's like
Yeah.
LLC does.
In terms of liability,
Yeah.
so if you don't incorporate, would that give you the veil of liability coverage?
No, if you don't incorporate, you don't have any liability protection.
So you would not same. You were alone.
Now, you know, many nonprofits now do get insurance for their board of directors, even though they do have that liability protection. If you are an informal nonprofit and you wanted to protect it, you could get insurance. But you don't have to, you won't have the liability protection. So according to the Internal Revenue Service, the nonprofit organization is formed to serve a purpose of public or mutual benefit other than the accumulation of profit. So if you have a for-profit business, your main purpose is to make a profit. So in fact, if you don't make a profit after 3 years, the IRS calls it a hobby and says you can't deduct your business expenses anymore. So, but as a nonprofit, your mission is not to make money. Your mission is to provide service or support to people. So some people think that nonprofits can't make a profit or can't run a surplus, but in fact they can, and they should if they can, because what you do with that surplus is grow your nonprofit. The money has to go back into your nonprofit. And again, some people think nonprofits can't pay salaries, but they can. If you have money and you want to pay your executive director, you can do that. If you can afford to hire staff and pay them, you can do that. So there are not a lot of constraints, as you can actually run a nonprofit very much organizationally like you run a for-profit. You do want to have a good organization. You do want to be able to make money. You do want to be able to track your finances. You want to do everything that a for-profit business does. So why do you need a board? Well, first of all, before you can apply for a tax exemption, you have to have a board and you have to have bylaws, and the board has to approve the bylaws. And ultimately, the board will have responsibility for overseeing how the organization is run. So they manage the priorities. They are responsible for determining the policies. They evaluate the performance, particularly of the executive director, and they make sure that the organization is sticking to its mission. So as I said a little bit earlier, you want to identify the skills that you need to support your nonprofit. It's almost impossible to have a growing nonprofit organization by yourself. You have got to have people who can help you. And if your mission is really something that you are passionate about, and you find other people who are as passionate about that cause, ask them to join your board. And again, identify what is it I can do and what is it I need other people to do. And then go through it. You know, there are a lot of companies in Cleveland that encourage their staff to volunteer with nonprofits. So you will find, say, legal firms, accounting firms, that encourage their members to participate in nonprofits. And so you want to think about tapping into those. You know, think about your churches, think about your schools, other organizations that have service type mentality. And go out and you want to encourage them to participate. And when you start out, your board is really working with you to get your nonprofit up and running. So you want to stay in touch with people. You don't want to ask people to be on your board and then don't talk to them again for months. You know, keep them in touch. Make sure they know what you're doing. Make sure they know what you want them to do. If possible, you'd like them to donate money. Many organizations do require that their board members donate a certain amount of money every year. But again, when you ask somebody to be on your board, if they can't or don't want to, maybe they know somebody else who would be the perfect person. You know, so go out and talk to people. If you have business cards made up, pass them out to people. You know, make sure you have your mission statement ready. So if you run into people, you can say, you know, my organization provides these services to these people. And we do it by such and such, and you want them to be part of it. So again, the board then ultimately is going to approve and monitor your mission statement, make sure that you adhere to it. Their job is to help you find the resources that you need to be successful. They are responsible for oversight, looking at the legal issues, the ethical issues, fiduciary responsibility, and also evaluate the executive director and make sure that, again, that they have the support they need to do their job. And also your board members are your ambassadors in the community. They go out and represent you in the community. So if you get people who are enthusiastic and passionate about what they're doing, they can be wonderful when it comes to, again, raising money, making people aware of what you're trying to do. So again, you want always to have your mission statement ready for anybody that you want to talk to about joining the board. You know, explain what you expect of them. Tell them, I need your help. And then again, if they don't know if they don't want to do it, maybe they know somebody. So usually when you're starting out, you have a founding board, and those people will help you actually with your day-to-day operations because you haven't recruited a lot of staff or volunteers. You might have one of those people being responsible for recruiting volunteers. But once you get up and running and you now have a staff or volunteers, the board members step back a little bit and take more of a governing role and an oversight role. So one of the things that you should be thinking about from the very beginning when you set up your nonprofit is, how can I tell people that I'm being successful? What am I measuring to show that I'm being successful? Sometimes social benefits are really difficult to measure. You know that you're helping people, but they don't, you know, funders don't want to hear, well, I helped 15 people. They want to know what the outcome is. What happened to those 15 people that you helped? How did you help them? What was the result? So those are things that you really need to think about. For instance, in SCORE, you know, we mentor people and we do webinars, But what we actually measure our success by is how many small businesses have been started. Because if we don't see small businesses being started, we're not successful. So you have to have a way to measure your success. If you go to apply for a grant, they want that information. So, you know, again, think about that from the very beginning. What am I doing that shows I'm being successful? Okay, and again, you know, a lot of people will be motivated just by hearing you and understanding your passion. Because that's motivating to people when they see this person is so enthralled and excited about this cause, and maybe I can do something to help. So, you know, keep that in mind when you talk to people, show them how excited you are about your business. You know, obviously, you're probably not going to be able to pay people in the same way that they can be paid in the for-profit sector. But people are motivated by things other than money. So some of the things you have to do on a regular basis. Every year, the IRS requires that you file Form 990. For many small businesses, it's just a postcard. So it's not really burdensome. You do have to have a conflict of interest policy. And if you pay your board, and in some cases, people do pay board member, you have to have a policy about it and explain why you're doing it. Ohio doesn't require an annual audit, but the IRS can come in and audit whenever they feel like it. So you do want to make sure that you adhere to the rules. And again, just like your personal income tax, you do have to file your tax and information returns when they tell you they're due. So where do nonprofits normally get their revenue? About half come from fee for service. And again, I remind you, big hospitals and universities are nonprofits, and they charge for stuff. You know, they charge tuition, they charge, if you're a museum, you charge entry fees. So if you have a service that you can charge for, you should do that. Now, understanding that maybe a lot of your clients can't afford to pay, so you can have a sliding scale. But if you do have a service that you can charge for, yes.
What is the best rates?
I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing.
What's the best way to conduct a sliding scale, you're trying to develop?
Well, you know, that would depend on what you're doing. You know, some services you provide actually might qualify for insurance reimbursement. You know, that's another thing to think about. So,
Maybe you might want to
Yeah.
repeat the question.
Yeah.
again.
yeah. Okay, so a question about sliding scales, and I think that that's something that you have to work out with your mentor, or every situation is going to be different. But if you can charge for a service, you should try to do that. And also check out if you can possibly get insurance reimbursement from Medicaid, Medicare, or other sources. Also, you know, people feel that they can get all their money from grants. And I can tell you that that doesn't work. And partially it doesn't is because grant money is restricted. And that means that whoever gives you the money expects you to use it exactly the way you described in the application. And they don't like to pay for administrative work. They like to pay just for program costs. So you need unrestricted funds, which means they need to come from donations and other types of revenue. Because otherwise you're stuck using your restricted funds in the way that you have to use them. Also, if you apply for grants, there's a long period of time between when you apply and when you get funding. Especially federal grants, it's 10 months from the time you submit to the time you hear about funding. Private grants are much shorter, but they will still be a matter of months. So again, it's unlikely you're going to get funds from grants for administrative type work. Also, if you're asking for capital expenditures, those generally come from special fundraising campaigns. So if you're going to apply for any kind of funding, you have to be aware, what is your mission? What is the population served? Obviously, the more people you serve, the more likely you are to make an impact in the community. But if you have a very specialized nonprofit, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply just because you only serve 10 or 15 or 20 clients a month. So a lot of applications will want a list of your board members and even your staff members. Again, they want track record. They want to know, what have you been doing for the past few years? You know, how can you show me that you're successful? They want clear financial projections. And I know putting together a budget for a nonprofit is a challenge, but you have to do it if you want funding. So, and again, if you come and get a SCORE mentor, we will help you with that. So we have a lot of good mentors who are used to doing nonprofits. They know how to approach the funding issues, and we're happy to help you. So how do you get started? First of all, document your mission. That is the most important part of your nonprofit. What is it you're going to do? Who are you going to do it for? And how are you going to do it? You want to select a name. You register the name in Ohio as a nonprofit organization. That will cost you $99. You have to select your board members and prepare bylaws. And then a business plan and a budget. Again, SCORE mentors can really help you put together a business plan and a budget, and do take advantage of it. You know, if you have no experience with a nonprofit, it's so helpful to have a guide. And again, you can go to our website and get a mentor very easily. There are two different forms that the IRS has available. One is called the Form 1023. It's 18 pages long and requires submission of a lot of information. The 1023 EZ is a 3-page. And if it depends on how much money you're projecting, for the first 3 years of your existence as a nonprofit. That will determine which one of the forms you have to submit. The Ohio Secretary of State, where you can register your nonprofit. This is where you would go to the Ohio State website. You sign up and you can register your nonprofit there. It's a Form 532B. And again, you put in your list of officers and directors. You will get, when you apply to the IRS, you will get a letter of determination. And then you take it back to the state and they will also give you tax exemption. But you have to have your IRS to get IRS approval to get tax exemption from the state. And then you file an annual registration and it calculates how much depending on where you are with your nonprofit. And then every 5 years, you have to let them know that you're still in existence. So planning is really important. You know, you want to update your business plan frequently. You want to continue to learn about the area that you're focusing on. Know what trends. The Cleveland Public Library has a wonderful database called Insights that helps you understand what are the trends, what's happening, what's projected to be happening in the next few years. They have a research database called Data Axle that will help you research other people in the same nonprofit space that you're in. You can build a network using social media. And for sure, you want to have a great website. So these are the elements of a business plan. Now, we also do have a somewhat shorter business plan that we often use with nonprofits. But, you know, you do need to know your competition. You do need to know your market. And that means how many people with our potential clients. You know, if you are only going to be serving 10 people a year, it's probably going to be difficult to get your organization up and running. If you're going to be serving 10 a day, that's a whole different thing. So it's important to understand how many people have the condition that you are going to be, or the problem that you're going to be solving with your nonprofit. So you need also to know what exactly are you providing. You know, you have to sit down and really detail what are the services I'm going to be providing and how is that going to work? You know, you need to work out the systems to make sure that when a client walks in the door, you know exactly how to process that client. So again, we're more than happy to help you put those together. Here's a database that is absolutely wonderful. It's called Candid. And let's see if I can find, okay. Hopefully I can show you. Here's a sample of a grant maker profile. Now the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is a very well-known organization that provides a lot of funding to many nonprofits. And here it says they funded 3,739 grants to 1,471 organizations totaling over $2 billion. And you can go down here and say, what type of organizations are they funding? You can see higher education, public health, and so forth. Where is the money going? And what's the range of grants that they're providing? So if you're interested in applying to a certain organization, you can go into this database and get all this information about and decide, is this something, does my organization fall into that group that they're funding? I want to show you some other information. Here's a sample of an organization that gets a lot of funding. And here's an organization called Population Services. They've received 592 grants from 108 grant makers. Again, over $1 billion. And here you can see what kinds of grants they got, where are the funders located, and again, what is the amount of the grants. So you can look up an organization that's similar to yours and see where they're applying for funding. And maybe that's a good way for you to apply for funding there as well. So that's a tremendous database. And many of our libraries will give you free access to this database, and they'll show you how to use it.
Just got a comment, don't see your screen, make sure you show.
Okay. You don't see my screen?
I see. Actually, I'm not seeing that.
You're not seeing that? Okay. Well, I would just say that when you get the slides, these links are all live and they will take you to these databases. This one will take you to a booklet called Starting a Nonprofit Organization in Ohio. And it goes through the whole process. Again, so you can follow along. Again, if you meet with a mentor, and you'll go through this and end up with a nonprofit. One of the organizations that you should really look into is called TechSoup. And the nice thing about that,
So then you're not sure.
you're not showing it, okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if you want to stop sharing and then re-share that screen.
Yeah, well, I think I'll just say, go to TechSoup. It's a nonprofit organization, but what it does is give you access to free or low cost applications and tools from Microsoft and a lot of other companies. So like SCORE gets Microsoft, I think we do still, at a much lower cost because we're a nonprofit. Again, I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Look at this. Oh. And again, these are live links to a number of different things. There's a monthly newspaper that has a lot of articles about nonprofits and things that are going on in the nonprofit world. And the Bridgespan Group, again, has a lot of articles on things that are really relevant to nonprofit organizations. So all of these, again, are very useful websites that give you a lot of good information about nonprofits. And again, to go back just to the forms, there's the 1023 and the 1023 EZ. And again, I would work with my mentor to work out a budget. Hopefully you will. For most of the small nonprofits, we end up with the 1023 EZ. But occasionally we'll have to do the long one. So if you have to do the long one, you need your articles of organization from the state. You need your bylaws, your budget, balance sheets, Schedule A through H. All these things have to be attached. And the fee is $600. If you do the 1023, it's $275. So again, I just urge you to come and work with a mentor. We're happy to help you, and it will facilitate making sure that you get the right thing at the right time and make it a little easier for you. Yes.
Anita, so, as we close, I've got a couple questions that came through the chat.
Okay.
One of which is, how many minimum do you need?
Okay. The IRS requires that you have a minimum of 3 board members. We usually encourage you to have 5. Mostly because if you only have 3 and one can't show up, you basically can't have a board meeting. So it's good to have 4 or 5 at minimum. And again, you want to think about what are the functions that have to be carried out and who's going to do them, and recruit board members for that purpose. You know, that's really important.
And someone wants to know if you can go from a, I think an LLC to a nonprofit. Maybe say LLC to a nonprofit.
Yeah. You can actually be a nonprofit if you're an LLC. You can actually, but what happens if you do have to file the long form? And you also can, there's a form, and I can't think of the number of it right now, on the Ohio State website. It's called a conversion form, and you can apply to convert from one to another. If you have been in business as an LLC and you want to convert to a nonprofit, it gets kind of complicated because you then have to settle with the Ohio Tax Department. Sometimes it's easier just to close the for-profit and start a new nonprofit, but depending on what the circumstances are. So.
I've gone through everything in the chat.
Pardon?
I said I've gone through everything.
Oh,
in
okay,
the chat.
okay. All right, then that's it. So
Questions from you?
any more questions?
Will you apply for the store manager and what it's called that?
I can email, reply, I can write the things, whatever, as far as like actually calling back, and I've been to several meetings like this, more like the PNC, and like a lot of different places or whatever, but I still have yet to have someone contact me.
Well, tell you what.